Hello and welcome to all of you joining us today on this very special occasion. Maybe you are already preparing dinner, or you're watching from your office before you head home. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you here. My name is Blanca Garza Jacobs, and I work here at Second Harvest of Silicon Valley as an English and Spanish storyteller since July of last year, and I am honored to be your host this afternoon. We're live in separate offices here at Second Harvest of Silicon Valley from our Cypress warehouse in San Jose, where donated produce is sorted and prepped for our community. We're so excited to have you connected via Zoom today, April 8th, for this town hall event and share with you all what has happened in our organization in the past year since pandemic started. We will hear from our CEO, Leslie Bacho, and how Second Harvest responded to the need doubling and how Second Harvest went from serving 250,000 people per month to 500,000. We will hear from three panelists who will answer some of your pre-submitted questions. But first, we're going to kick off this town hall hearing directly from a Second Harvest client.
I have two kids. Peterson, he is 5 years old. He has stolen my heart. And Kaylee, she's my dream baby. I dreamed her up just the way she is. She's perfect.
Some of my dreams are probably becoming a writer, becoming a doctor or surgeon, and maybe even filming a movie.
We live on a one-bedroom apartment with my mom and my stepdad. Before the pandemic, I had a part-time job doing advertising. We were getting by. After the pandemic, things got a little harder. I was not gonna be able to have a part-time job anymore because my kids had to stay home for homeschooling. I was worried. I didn't know how we were going to survive. I took a moment in my car, letting all those feelings out.
There definitely was a time where I thought, am I gonna have a roof over my head, food?
I just talked to my mom. She was like, oh, I saw this place that is called Second Harvest. When she got home and we opened the boxes, they were milk, eggs, cheese,
fruits, vegetables, chicken, those tiny tomatoes, cucumber. I was basically like, ooh, what's in this box? What's in that box? Oh my gosh.
And we were able to use that money that we had for the food on bills and other things that we needed to pay at that moment. I really hope they find a way to control this pandemic so I can go back to work. But I somehow need my kids to go back to school for me to be able to go back to work. So it's a process. It makes me feel in peace knowing that I have Second Harvest as my food provider during this pandemic, because I don't have to worry about getting food for my kids.
And that was the Castellano family from San Jose. A beautiful and touching story we just saw in that video. And now I am pleased to welcome Second Harvest CEO, Leslie Bacho. Leslie joined Second Harvest in 2017 after serving as the Chief Operating Officer at the San Francisco Marine Food Bank for 19 years. Since taking the helm as CEO at Second Harvest, Leslie led the company to reduce barriers to nutritious food. And in the past year, she led the community to serve twice as many people during the pandemic. For her efforts, she was recognized as a 2020 Silicon Valley Business Journal Woman of Influence. Welcome, Leslie. How are you?
Thank you, Blanca. It's great to be here.
Amazing to have you. Let's look back at the last year. Leslie, can you share with us some defining moments from the start of the pandemic?
Sure. Well, I remember very vividly that week before shelter in place, when we were just beginning to understand how deadly and contagious this virus it was. I went out to one of our distribution sites at Santee Elementary School. And I remember it was one of our traditional distribution sites that looks like a little farmer's market, and lots of families were lined up to get groceries. And we were trying to keep people socially distant, but I could see right then that we were going to have to do things really differently in order to keep people safe. But what stood out to me the most, I started talking to people who were in the line, asking them what they were concerned about, and they weren't so afraid of getting sick. They were just really worried about their jobs. I talked to so many people who were custodial workers and working in restaurants and cafeterias, and this is when businesses were just starting to send employees home. And they were so concerned about what was going to happen to their jobs and their livelihoods.
Oh, absolutely. And what was in your mind when all of this was starting?
Well, at the very beginning, my biggest concern was just the safety of our staff and volunteers. And I have to say, our staff have been incredible throughout this pandemic, really setting aside their own concerns about their personal safety and their own pandemic challenges, and working very long hours to allow us to have this incredible response. But in the beginning, you might remember the guidance was really changing all the time. And one thing we said we were going to do is really have our local counties kind of be our North Star, and that we were going to work very, very closely with them to make sure we could keep people safe and stay open. And of course, the other thing that was really challenging was that the need was increasing so quickly. Right at the beginning, our Food Connection hotline that usually gets 180 calls a day, they started getting 1,000 calls a day, mostly from people coming to us for the first time. And, at our sites, we started seeing 50% more people, then 100% more people. And this was at a time when the supply chain, there was so much disruption. If you remember just going to your local grocery store and you couldn't find pasta or rice or some canned goods, we were facing those same challenges. So that was probably the most sleepless nights, was just when the demand was so hard to predict and the supply was so hard to predict. And one thing we said from the beginning was we were going to try to meet 100% of the need, and that we weren't going to say no if people wanted to help us open a new distribution or serve more people at their site. And fortunately, we were able to do that, but it was very touch and go for a while there.
Oh yeah, challenging times for sure, Leslie. Well, the community certainly has been amazing during this past year. I was moved personally by Vanessa's story, a woman we met at a distribution last year, single mom, no job, going through a very tough time, very stressful for sure, trying to make ends meet. And she had been selling kitchenware door to door before pandemic. And when she was not able to do that because of shelter in place, she started selling tamales to friends and family and people around the neighborhood until she became ill with COVID-19 and couldn't even make that little bit of money to pay some of her bills, and most of the time just half of her rent. But we signed her up to our home delivery program until she got back on her feet, and now she's doing well and continues to get her food for her and her son from one of our distribution centers while waiting to get back to work. That's for sure. But this is just one story of so many in our community. Vanessa was helped by Second Harvest, and Second Harvest was able to help her because of our community of donors and volunteers. Leslie, when we talked before, you were saying how it's the community that makes you feel confident that we can continue meeting this need.
Absolutely. Well, I have just been so grateful for the incredible response we've seen from the community. We've always said that we're in it together, but that has certainly never been more true. I am really grateful to our volunteers. I mean, they have been amazing throughout, helping here in our warehouse, sorting and boxing product, helping out at our distribution sites, doing home deliveries like you described, making masks for us. We truly could not do this work without volunteers. And then, of course, we're also fortunate to have this incredible network of nonprofit partners. We have more than 300 nonprofit partners that are soup kitchens, they're after school programs, they're shelters. They're also schools and community colleges and faith-based organizations. And they have all been really rolling up their sleeves and deep in this work with us throughout. Of course, none of this could happen without financial support. And I'm so grateful to this community that has really showed up I remember early in the pandemic, one of our major donors, Cheryl Sandberg, called me to say, even before shelter in place, I can see this is going to be big. I know you guys are going to need support. Let me help you with your fundraising. And raising those early dollars was really critical because that gave us the confidence to really go big with our response from the very beginning. But of course, we have really been so fortunate. What's probably moved me the most is just the tens of thousands of donors that have made it possible for us to continue that response. And, we were getting stimulus checks from people who said, I know somebody needs this more than I do. So just so grateful, again, for the tens of thousands of people who have made this possible.
That's amazing. If you had any doubt that we are live, I don't know if you can hear the beeping from the truck outside is pulling up. Okay, we're live, guys. We are live here at Second Harvest offices, just in case you could hear it. But Leslie, I wanted to ask you, where have you gotten inspiration and support as a leader?
Well, I probably have gotten the most inspiration from our staff and volunteers. I mean, people have stayed so positive throughout this pandemic. And, I go out to our distribution sites and I would meet volunteers that have been volunteering week after week that are doing this backbreaking work. And they would always be thanking me for the opportunity.
Yes.
People are just so grateful to have a chance to come together and give back. And I guess, I also just want to say at our distribution sites, they are not downtrodden and depressing. Everybody is, just so positive and grateful. Even though people are in their cars, you see lots of thumbs up signs and lots of smiles and just lots of gratitude throughout. So I guess that's what has been most inspiring to me is just people's ability to really rise above it and truly, be there for one another.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And as we have recently seen in various reports from local authorities, many cities are getting ready to start reopening businesses. And so many people will have the opportunity to go back to work or school in person. Leslie, where is Second Harvest going from here?
Well, unfortunately, Blanca, this crisis is far from over. I think what the pandemic has really revealed is how many people were already living paycheck to paycheck without a lot of savings. And we know that low wage workers have really been disproportionately impacted, families and people of color. And, I was doing this work back in 2008 during the Great Recession. And what we saw then, we saw about a 50% increase over a number of years, nothing like this 100% increase over a matter of weeks. But
Right.
What we also saw is that for low-income families, once you've had to really wipe out your savings, once you've gotten behind on your rent payments, it just takes so long to recover from that kind of economic setback. And we saw then that even when the numbers leveled off, we continue to serve at about that level for quite some time. And so as we're thinking about the future, we're really trying to be prepared to continue this level of service. And that's what we've seen is we've been holding pretty steady at about 500,000 people every month. The other thing we're thinking about is, of course, this pandemic has also given us the chance to, it kind of accelerated some of the innovations we were working on and gave us new ways of looking at how we're doing this work. And so I'm sure that we'll plan to continue some of those into the future.
All right. Well, let me ask you, what changes do you think that will stay that you started in the past 13 months and what will change?
Well, an example is one thing we started doing is collecting people's cell phone numbers, which has been really helpful because anytime there was a change to a distribution, then we can text people to let them know. We can also get quick feedback on how we're doing. It's also giving us a much better understanding of who we're serving. Another thing in this pandemic, pre-pandemic, we had about 3 drive-throughs. Most of our distributions were these farmers markets. Now we have 130 drive-throughs. And while I'm sure that we'll go back to some combination of farmers markets where people can select what they want, what we've seen with these drive-throughs is the convenience and also the anonymity of them has really helped to reduce a lot of the stigma. So I imagine that we'll continue some combination of those.
Let me ask you, what do you mean by stigma? I think a lot of people think accepting free food would be easy.
Yeah, well, in my experience, we live in a society that really values independence, and people are so reluctant to ask for help. I've met people who, when they describe the meals that they're skipping, or maybe they're having to resort to fast food for their family every night because that's all they can afford, and I ask them, why don't you go to your local food pantry? People will say, oh, well, that's for people who really, really need the help. Or people will say, I just feel too embarrassed. I don't want my neighbors to see me there. And I think that is one thing about this pandemic, is because we have gotten a lot of media attention, I think people are much more aware that food insecurity is very real, even in this very affluent community that we live in, and just how available our services are. I was talking to someone who mans our Food Connection hotline just this week, and she was telling me she's getting more and more calls for people who are being referred by their friends, which is so great to hear, because that just demonstrates how comfortable people feel and how welcoming our distribution sites are. And so, that's what we're hoping, is that more people will feel comfortable getting help. I mean, we truly are a community organization that's supported by the community, run by the community, and we want everybody to feel like they have an ownership stake in Second Harvest. Whether you need support or whether you're in a position to provide support, we want people to feel that we are really here for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Leslie, thank you so, so much. I am so glad we have this incredible community to support this work and your leadership to do it. Leslie, thank you again so, so much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to meet our panelists, you guys. We invited those who registered to vote on questions to answer. Thank you all for your input. Today, joining us to give us insight into their work are Shelby Sena, Senior Manager, Capacity Planning. We also have Jakia Jones, Regional Program Manager. And we have Sam Karp, Client Innovation Project Manager. We will start with Shelby. Hi, Shelby. How are you? Tell us about changes to Second Harvest operations in response to COVID.
Hi, thank you. Well, feeding 500,000 people per month during the pandemic has required a huge lift operationally. As you can imagine, doubling the number of clients we serve meant we needed twice as much food, 11 million pounds per month to be precise. And to meet the unprecedented demand, our food sourcing team increased food purchasing, food donations, and sourcing from government programs. And distributing that volume of food efficiently and safely meant shifting to boxing most of it. I'm abundantly impressed by our warehouse staff, who pretty much overnight designed box build lines where there were none before. And of course, a huge thank you to our volunteers, the National Guard, and the San Jose Conservation Corps, who've helped staff those build lines, filling the boxes that ultimately reach clients. Since we need more space for all this food, we're now renting a fourth warehouse, and we've added 14 trucks to our fleet to deliver over 90 tractor trailer loads of food to agencies each week. So I've always been proud to work for Second Harvest, but especially right now, because these changes took a great deal of heart, collaboration, and quick on the feet collaboration across departments. We simply had to make it happen, so we did. Our clients deserve the absolute best.
Absolutely, they do. Thank you so much, Shelby. Now let's hear from Jakia Jones. Hi, Jakia. How are you?
Hi, Blanca.
Hi. Tell us the ways people can access nutritious food when they need it right now.
Sure. Well, any person who needs food can get it. Start with our website, shfb.org, for more information on how to text, email, or call. If people call, they speak to a real representative that will connect them to a distribution. We have various distribution types, such as drive-throughs, walk-ups, a combination of the two, and even home delivery for pre-qualified clients, which includes seniors and homebound individuals. When people arrive at a distribution, they will be checked in by volunteers via tablet or via paper. And those same group of volunteers will also load boxes into their carts or their cars. So what comes in the boxes? We give boxes of non-perishable items such as canned goods, rice, shelf-stable items. We give produce boxes. Half of what we distribute is produce. And we give a combination box with dairy, produce, meat, and non-perishables. Most importantly, anyone who needs food can get it. Check out our website, shfb.org, for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shakia. And now we go to Sam Karp. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, Blanca.
Tell us more about our clients in the community we serve.
Yeah, so as Leslie, Shelby, and Jakia mentioned, we've expanded our drive-through and home delivery distributions an incredible amount, and we're serving 500,000 people a month, a number behind which are so many hardworking families, seniors, and even students. Now, some folks might be thinking about the kind of person who really needs Second Harvest, but the time that we're living in has flipped on its head all notions of who uses food assistance in the first place. That's why clients can't really be identified by how they look or what they wear or even the car that they drive. Now, sometimes when, got a bit of a hiccup. Now, sometimes when we think about food distributions, we think about people in a certain image, but,
Okay.
I've got the hiccups. Now, like I said, there are many differences between the folks that we serve, but at the same time, there are lots of commonalities. 99 times out of 100, the people that we serve are coming to food distribution, not only to pick up food for themselves, but for other people as well, like their families, their friends, even their neighbors. And on top of that, for seconds, they also are overcoming the stigma of using a food distribution in the first place. And that's why we're trying to get better and better at providing an excellent experience for our clients that's welcoming and dignified. We never want our clients to feel unwelcome or judged or looked down upon for coming to our distributions. In fact, we strive not to make assumptions in the first place about their lived experiences. Really what we want is for our clients to feel safe and welcome when they come to our distributions. And that's because we're all stronger when our clients are stronger, because we're all in this together. We're all human.
Absolutely, Sam. Well said. That's so true. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sam. And I want to go back to Shelby for one more question. Shelby, what can the community do to help Second Harvest meet client needs?
There are 3 main ways to help. 1, if you know someone who needs food, share that we can help. 2, volunteer. Especially now, we need volunteers at our distribution sites and during the weekdays. Lastly, donate at shfb.org. 95% of contributions go directly to client programs.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Shelby. Guys, that's it from us at Second Harvest. Thank you so much for watching this afternoon. Thank you so much for your continued support, and see you next time. Bye from all of us.